So, in order to walk away from something that no longer serves us, what do we need? Strength, courage. And how about something to walk to? Right? In order to walk away from something that no longer serves us, we need a magnetizing, radiating vision to walk to. And in Unity, we practice that vision is always an emanation of principle. So it's okay if we don't know physically, if we don't know in our imaginary minds, if we don't know on this planet what it is, that's okay. Because we're walking towards principle, and that's all we need to know. Because when we walk into principle, we walk into God consciousness. And when we walk into God consciousness, all of our needs are met in wondrous ways that are beyond these imaginings that we could even go to if we tried. Amen? So when we're ready to walk away from something, when we see something that no longer serves our lives, even if we can't define it, that's okay. If we simply release and say a mighty prayer of release, and we step towards something and put our hearts, put our minds towards the sun, and set an intention of being teachable, reachable, movable, malleable, in an absolutely positively grateful way, we will surely be moved into something greater. And that process of stepping into principles, stepping into higher degrees of an expression of God consciousness, is the idea also of moving into accountability. What makes the difference between something that we read, that we think about, that we know about, and something that we practice and we embody? Well, it's the degree to which we can be accountable for putting it into actions. But we know as human beings, we have blind spots, right? Today I don't have my glasses, and it's ironic that I have them, they're just not right here. But when I don't have them on, right, I can't be accountable for the clarity of my sight. I haven't brought with me the tools, and I haven't applied the tools that are born within me spiritually, right? I haven't brought them with me so that I can see clearly. So I can no longer be accountable for the very detail of the expression on your face. How often do we do that in our own lives? With our own accountabilities. The spiritual practice becomes greater when we have also a practice of accountability. Because if we can't step into action around these thoughts and ideas and visions, if we can't become accountable for our own lives and our own actions, our own spiritual practice, then what happens? Either we live a life of non-accountability, we live a life of impotence, we live a life of leaking our spiritual power, or what tends to happen, which is a fascinating thing to view in our own lives and in the lives of those we love, we externalize our authority. We externalize our motivation and our accountability. This externalization takes the form of all sorts of things that we like to pass off as not being externalizations of our own inner authority. But in fact, that is what they are. Take this example. I make a commitment, and my commitment is to borrow funds and to pay them back in a timely fashion. And I say I'm willing to do that. Okay, step over to this side of consciousness and go, this credit card company, they're just hunting me down, those people. They're hunting me down, wanting this money. I don't have money for them. I don't have money for them. Why don't you go get the money I owe you from somewhere else? How about from somewhere else? Or why don't you just take it on yourself? You have enough. You got enough. Just because I borrowed it from you with this agreement, saying I would pay it back in this fashion. And now I can't hold myself accountable. I can't hold myself accountable for my choices, so what am I going to do? I'm going to say, ooh, it's about you. Now take that example and apply that to anything, because we all have our own blind spots, do we not? Take that concept and that idea. Anyone feel nagged ever? Anyone ever feel like someone's on our case? Are they ever on our cases about something that we really want to be on our own case about? So when someone is on your case, when someone is on my case about something that is really mine to be accountable for, because see, it's a short conversation if it's not really something I want to be accountable for. The conversation goes like this: I'm fine with this about me. I'm going to let it go. I'd invite you to let it go too, because this is me and I'm happy with it. Right? That's one conversation. But the other conversation is, I'm doing this, it's not effective in my life, this doesn't work, I hate this about this, I just. But you hold me accountable and woo, you're on my case all the time. Externalizing our own internal accountability. That's why programs such as AA and the Landmark Forum, programs have an accountability factor placed in there. They have a process to which we can become accountable to ourselves, a process by which in community we can hold each other accountable because we've asked for that. You know, in business practices, any good leader knows that it is much more effective to have someone set their own goals and then to say to them, so when are you going to do this by? And how would you like to be held accountable? That's way more effective than going, hey, you said you were going to have that done by last Thursday and it's not done. You said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. That's externalizing authority. That's taking what belongs within someone, what grows them, and putting it outside as if it wasn't coming from them. But truly, in fact, when we can embody our own authority and we can grow our own authority within and our own accountabilities, wow, being in life and being in relationship and being in self is much better, isn't it? Because you know what stops to happen? The projector screen. The projector screen stops to happen all around us because we live in a sentient experience where that projector screen is constantly going out, right? I'm projecting my stuff onto you. I'm projecting. In fact, it's interesting noticing the news, and it's interesting looking at the global changes that are happening, right? Because I feel like we're really moving into a phase and a stage of personal and global accountability. Because no longer can you get by with just telling a story and having no one else find out what's behind it. But now there's a little webcam just about everywhere, right? And if it's not a real webcam, it's a metaphysical, mystical webcam, right? Because people are becoming awake to their own behaviors, right? There's a show that's produced, I think it's on HBO, and it's called Vice. And it's a show where they take news stories that are typically in the news, right? But you know, everyone knows, right, that our news is different from the news in Britain, which is different from the news in Central America, which is different from the news here, right? We all know that the news is different everywhere. Even sometimes the facts are different. Facts are different. But this program goes in on the ground level to do just interviews. So it tries to go take the story, and instead of just telling the story, it tries to show the story. And so it's really interesting because you can hear these stories about, well, how is it that the people that, we trained these people militarily, and then this is happening, but then they trained the other people. So are you saying that we trained the people that now we're fighting against, and you're saying that the people that are using the weapons are the people, and those are our weapons? And how is that happening? How is it happening that our weapons are okay, so we keep giving weapons, but then in 2 seconds, those weapons are being traded over to those people then that are killing these people? It used to be you could get away with telling those stories, no? But that day and age is over. That day and age is over. So it's a big time for individuals on the individual level to check into our own accountabilities, because globally we're going to have to continue to check into our own accountabilities, because the day and age where the mystical and the metaphysical and the visual is hidden is over. And people are saying, I want to see the accountability. People are saying, you can't say that everyone in Iran hates everyone in Iraq, because guess what? I have Facebook, and I'll show you, I don't hate you. I love you. I want your child to have a future. I want my child to have a future. I want us to heal this. We no longer have to take people's words for it, and that's beautiful because that's a demonstration and an expression of principle in action, right? That's more aligned with the truth, more aligned with the real practice. It's that I don't need someone else to tell me about my God because I have direct access through meditation, through prayer, through affirmation, through acknowledging the mystical world around me and bringing that to my heart center and asking, saying, sitting with this or that. I have direct access to that wisdom. And so does everyone else, right? So we're no longer in a stage and a phase of impotence. There was an article this week that I saw. It was actually a video article, pretty funny. Well, not funny, but funny to see this video. And this guy was riding his bicycle, and he's on this trip around the world doing some, reality kind of showing his adventure. And so he's riding his bike in a foreign country, and he gets attacked and stopped. Someone steals his bag that has money and equipment, etc. And you can think for a moment, well, these things always happen, and there's always these things. Well, I wasn't there at the scene. I didn't do it, when you're looking at solving these issues, when you're looking at holding someone accountable, right? So what's happening? Well, the guy's riding his bike along. Someone stops him and gets right in his face, tells him to give him his bag and all of this. The guy, the scene unfolds. He runs away, kind of comes back, blah, blah, blah. The guy runs off. There's a lot of people around that saw him, but how good is an eyewitness too, right? Sometimes that doesn't work. So after the whole event, the guy stands there and he feels something on his head and he pulls it off. And it was his webcam, his camera. So his camera got the entire thing, got the guy in his face asking for his bag, while he's saying, and this is the funny part, he's saying, amigo, 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 right? Like friend, come on, friend. The time of transparency is now. So if the time of transparency is now, what spiritually is each of ours to do to get our houses in order? To get ourselves in order, to get our families in order, to get our communities in order, to get our planet in order. Because it's a coming of a great age. This is a coming of a great age. Myrtle Fillmore said, you are an integrated part. Oh, this isn't hers. Okay. This one I want to share. But I don't know who, I'm not being accountable here because I don't know who wrote it. So I'm trusting that it'll appear who wrote it, but I'm sharing that with you that I don't know who wrote this, and I found it in my catalog of notes and really wanted to share it with you today, and Googled it, and I couldn't find the reference. So here it is, and I'm sure I didn't write it. You are an integrated part of this planet traveling 16,000 miles per hour through the universe. At no moment is anything around you static. We are all hurtling through life, all bound to one another. You cannot get off this ride, but you can learn to steer it and travel without getting motion sickness. To do this, you first need to stand up and decide to take control of your life. The first principle to ingrain into yourself is an understanding that everything in life is in relation to you. It doesn't matter what they did to you, what twist of fate happened 50,000 miles back. It's all about you. You can spend the next decade whining and complaining about how hard life is, or you can learn the lessons life shows you. Michael Beckwith says, a good day for the soul is a bad day for the ego, or a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. So are we ready to step into personal accountability? To be our own inner authority? And does our spiritual practice have an accountability factor? Have we looked into creating one? What would that look like if we ideated an accountability factor? What would it look like in the unity movement if we did that? A lot of times we have it, but sometimes it takes the form of metaphysical malpractice, like, what in your consciousness drove that to you? Right? That's only something we can say to ourselves, right? But that's not something necessarily we bring up with other people. Oh, your knee's not working, you're afraid of moving forward. Well, that stuff works pretty well. Like if you look up in the Louise Hay book and you look at something, something's going on in my neck, most often it's been my experience that you go, oh, that's exactly what's going on with me. But I can only do that for myself, right? I can only be self-accountable to that. Because even in dreams, right, I can't say, you had a dream and you were a bird and this, well, a bird symbolizes this, and so you must be going through this, and then that's going to happen. Not exactly, right? We are each unique and individual expressions, also in this cosmic soup, also in this cosmic field where there are some patterns, right? There are some archetypes, so we can try it on. We can say, well, a bird metaphysically represents this, and this metaphysically represents that. Try that on. How does that feel? It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not feeling like that's what's going on. Maybe that's what's going on with you, right? But it's all individualized. And only we can have that inner authority granted by the most magnificent spiritual realm of authority that is alive and awake and everywhere present. So does our ego have an accountability program? Does our ego, does our spiritual practice have an accountability program? Are we willing to give up externalizing any portion of our internal authority? When we take on this practice, we move from having a religion or a spiritual practice that's in a book to having a spiritual practice that works in our lives. Because the only thing that can reveal blind spots, the only thing that can really lead us towards spiritual growth, real spiritual growth, is to take an authentic, unbiased, unattached look at ourselves, our own minds, our own thoughts, our own conversations. There's a book by Dr. Daniel Amen, and it's called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. But in that book, and also in many psychology books, a lot of thinking that no longer serves is identified. So let's take a look. Let's just check in. And when I say check in, I mean check in not out of guilt, not out of attachment, not out of I want to do well or I don't want to do well. I got a little video this week of my nephew that's 5 years old taking a vision test, and he's like uber smart, this little guy. He knows all the countries of the world, and that sounds like a joke, but it's not, and he's known them for years. Like he knew ones that I didn't even know existed, and he can point to all of them on a map. So he is like incredibly smart, right? But I watch him taking this vision test, and instead of the moon, it was shapes, because for kids, right? So instead of the moon, he says crescent. But I watched him taking that test from the little video that my sister sent to me, and I thought, sending healing love, sending light, because he's so used to succeeding so well, and I thought, oh my goodness, I hope he knows this test is different from any other one, right? And it doesn't matter, it's not a bad thing if he can't see the shape, right? Because eventually it's gonna get small enough, he's not gonna be able to see it, and he needs to know that it's okay, that that's just information. So can we step into this inquiry knowing that it's okay, it's just information. This is not a test to see how well we do or which areas we fail in. This is information, and in fact, the psyche and the ego needs to know it's just information in order to even see it. Otherwise, we'll be blind to it. So here we go. Always thinking. Do we engage in always thinking? Do we use words like always, never, no one, everyone, every time, everything? Focusing on the negative, seeing the bad in a situation. Fortune telling, predicting the worst possible outcome to a situation. Mind reading, believing that you know what another person is thinking, even though they haven't told you. Thinking with your feelings, believing negative feelings without questioning them. Thinking with your feelings. Guilt beating, thinking in words like should, must, ought, or have to. Labeling, attaching negative labels to yourself or to someone else. Personalization, innocuous events are taken to have personal meaning. So something happens, It's personal. Blaming someone else for your own problems. It's helpful to realize these thought patterns are ways of learned thinking. They're habits to break, to be accountable for. We all have them. If we're willing to take a bold look at them, we can transform our experience of our lives. And we will be shocked at how we can have an impact on our own lives in areas where we felt like we couldn't, where we felt like our lives were happening to us. And we begin to enter into that mystical realm where we realize what the master teacher said, ye are gods. It's a radical statement. But I believe the master teacher knew the law of mind action, knew the realm of co-creation, and how trusted we were, how trusted we are with that spiritual authority to co-create, to see, to make happen. Here's some more fun ones. If we're willing to recognize that outside circumstances are not going to change our happiness, not going to change when we try to manipulate them from the outside in, and that only changing our thought patterns will, awfulizing. Looking at things in a negative way, thinking that a problem is more severe than it is, exaggerating how bad something is. Have you ever had one of those days where something happened and you just thought it was the most awful thing, and then you go along your day and all of a sudden you wake up to yourself completely being unattached and realizing, who was that thought this was such a big deal? Did I really put myself under duress because of this? Did I really think this was the end of the world? Have you ever gone back to see earlier versions of yourself? Earlier versions of yourself that really, you worked yourself into a tizzy over something, that this self now would go, oh, little one. Oh, ye of little faith. Overlooking or ignoring the positive, advantages, benefits, good points when you evaluate something, considering only the negative or the disadvantage. Thinking in absolutes, extremes, overgeneralizations, or stereotypes. Thinking someone's good or bad because you've witnessed one behavior. Thinking about time in an inaccurate or extreme way, using terms like forever, never, always, when they're clearly invalid. How can we know what's in the future? How can we know? We make statements, though, don't we? It always ends like this for me. I would do that, but it always turns out this way. It's never going to happen. Thinking that there's only one solution to a problem or one way of doing something. Thinking that you never make mistakes or that you're always right. Inaction. Not taking responsibility for our own happiness. Emotional control, thinking that we're not in control of our feelings, that we're not in control of our emotions, thinking that they happen randomly for no good reason. So if we're ready to take a bold inquiry into these ways of thinking, ways of being, ways relating to our own inner authority, we will recognize that we can absolutely transform our lives. And we don't have to be beaten on by the world around us. We don't need to have an external police system. We don't need to have someone walking on our door to say, you've gone too far. We don't need to have letters showing up in the mail. Because we have our own sense of responsibility and accountability. And what will our world look like when that happens on a global level? I asked permission to share this story, but there was a couple that I was working with, and the gentleman had a communicable skin disease that was very irritating, itchy when it would flame up. It didn't always flame up, but it was very itchy when it would flame up, and it would, make discolorations and marks. And his wife kept saying, will you please go to the doctor? Because it's a simple thing. All you have to do is go to the doctor, take a pill, and then it goes away and it won't resurface. And she kept asking over and over again, I really don't want to get this if I don't need to get this. Could you just go take the pill? Oh, well, I'm so busy this week. Well, I have this to do. I just, no. Till finally one conversation happened, and she said, really? I'm just, why? This has been years, and can you just take care of it so that we know I won't get it? And he responded, and he said, well, you haven't gotten it so far, so how's that for accountability? Well, you haven't gotten it so far. What would that person answer if the next month they got it? And how does manifestation and demonstration work if we know that side? What would you say after if the person got it? See, the externalization of authority? Because then you're just setting yourself up to, what? Be in trouble. And go, see, you did this to me. Interesting paradigms we get ourselves into. I had an awakening myself with accountabilities, with what we can think of as crucial conversations. So just like all of us, I have a desire to treat people kindly, to be as gentle and loving as I can. And so I avoided some conversations that led to some interesting behaviors. There was an experience, and I'm not going to give the details, but an experience where someone showed up with something, let's say it's a product, and that product was not well done. That product was not professional. It'd be like showing up with a paper and saying, can we print this? And it was poorly edited, right? And you looked at it and it was like, ugh. I don't know what to say, but I couldn't do that, right? So say someone comes to you with an essay and it's just poorly edited, typos all over, or a resume, right? Has anyone seen this? A resume that's just, ugh, right? And instead of saying, it doesn't look like you took the time to spell check that resume, or I can't print this because it's not up to the level of that which we print here. Here are the things in that, right? So that's what accountable does, right? But what does the non-courageous, I don't want to hurt your feelings, I want you to feel okay, I understand that this is where you are with it, and for where you are with it, it's good, right? They step back and they say, that doesn't fit us right now. Or we're not really interested. Or we have other people that we're looking at, right? Fill in the blanks. Try to think of a time in your life where you may have said this, where you may have backed down from communicating for fear of hurting someone's feelings. I did that one time in a prayer team meeting. There was one person that was consistently exhibiting the same behaviors that were not functional to the group or not functional to the program, and I don't remember the details of it right now. But I, instead of specifically addressing that person and saying, hello, beloved, I appreciate and love you and everything that you do, and this part is your commitment, and this part isn't working for the program, so I need you to check in on that. Say it's being on time or whatever it is, right? I need you to check in on that. Instead of doing that, what did I do? I gave this global example to the whole team. We all really need to make sure that when we make our calls, we are blah, 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 blah. And it was a huge wake-up call for me because you know what happened? The one person that was doing it was like out to lunch. And everyone else got scared to death that they're the ones doing it. Well, I did get a call where this happened, and did I not do the right thing with that? Well, I'm really trying to do it. And it was like, oh no, you really show up amazingly. No, it's accountability. Accountability, right? It's destructive not to be accountable. It's compassionate to be accountable. It's compassionate to have critical conversations with ourselves and with the world around us. So here are some keys to remember. When trainers appear in our lives, spiritual trainers, outer authorities, naggers, only if they're the kind that we have the agreement that we want to shift something to, right? Letters. When trainers appear to be coming from the outside, don't crucify them. Go grateful. Don't crucify them. Go grateful. If you have asked for order in any area of your life, if you have asked for order in your finance and you get a tax bill, don't go victim, go grateful. That is the spiritual universe showing me, well, you have this vision, you have this prayer. If you really want to demonstrate it, get this in order. Be accountable. When you launch a prayer for time management, don't feel nagged when you're working with a new person that has a high need for pre-planning and order. Go grateful. In Unity, we have some kitschy sayings. It's all good. It'll be all good. It's in God's hands. Let us ask ourselves, what about my hands? How is it in my hands? And let's pick up a hammer and a nail and let's get to work. Namaste. I feel like that was a funny sermon, like we're all in trouble. We're just spreading the love and getting it today, that this is a practice that will absolutely transform our lives. Right? That will absolutely transform our life. And this is a practice that we want everyone in the world to have, isn't it? Isn't it? Global transformation. Let's close with our campaign for consciousness affirmation and then the peace song and the prayer for protection. We believe in the power to grow greatness. Our thinking impacts our lives, and our lives impact our world. How we spend our time, fill our minds, and fuel our souls makes a difference. We align our words and actions with our core values. Confidently, we release insecurity for inner authority and selfishness for selfhood. Consciously, we exchange excuses for accountability and a hand out for a hand up and impotence for impact. Courageously, we contemplate the impact of actions, implication of thoughts, and nature of beliefs. Energized and encouraged, we authorize only ideas and images that co-create a world that works for all. With a growing sense of authority and conviction, we express as courageous, informed, capable members of a creative universe. And so it is.